I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the good people of Perth Wellington for bestowing on me the honour of serving in this House as their Member of Parliament. In all I do, I pledge to the good people nothing but my hard work on their behalf. As all members know, none of us can do this job without the love and support of our family. I'm certainly no exception, and I could not have gone through this 11-week campaign without the love and support of my wife Justine, who's always been ever patient, and my darling daughter Ainsley, who was a lot younger when we started the campaign and is growing like a weed. And certainly our extended families, my parents, Bill and Darlene, my in-laws, John and Lori, and our countless campaign team, people like Keith and Matt, Tim and Tim, Sue, Irene, Cynthia, Lee, and Ross, who've all been with me throughout the campaign, working from sun up to sundown on my behalf and on behalf of the good people of Canada to advance their vision for a more perfect country. They campaigned through all weather conditions, from the heat of the summer to snow our last week in the campaign. They were there with me and with us throughout the campaign. The Great Riding of Perth Wellington is comprised of a number of municipal organizations. We have 7 lower-tier municipalities, 2 single-tier municipalities, 2 county governments, and dozens of small towns and villages. And during the campaign, we crisscrossed it all. By election day, we had knocked on over 30,000 doors, from Harrison to Harmony, Mount Forest to Milverton, from Stratford to Staffa to St. Mary's, and all points in between. And we heard one consistent message at the doors. Families were concerned about the economy, and they were looking to the government to extend a helping hand. At every doorstep, in every community hall, in every church basement, and on every main street, voters were not hesitant in expressing their views. They appreciated programs like pension splitting for seniors, income splitting for families, the universal child care benefit, the first-time homebuyers tax credit, and each of these initiatives provided targeted tax relief to Canadians who actually needed it. Now we have a new government, and I think it's important to highlight some of the contrast between this government across the way and our previous Conservative government. When our former Conservative government came to office in 2006, we also introduced a Bill C-2. That bill was the Federal Accountability Act. It strengthened conflict of interest rules, expanded access of information to Crown Corporation, increased transparency in lobbying activities, and overhauled political financing rules to ban not only corporate donations, but union donations as well. But now let's fast forward a decade, and here we are with another Bill C-2. But let's make no mistake, this bill is nothing but smoke and mirrors in an effort to try and implement a misguided, misleading Liberal campaign promise.
Misleading.
Under the provisions of this Bill C-2, the most benefits will go to those making a significant amount of money. Those making over $100,000 a year will be quite pleased, quite happy with measures brought forward in Bill C-2. But for those families who are struggling, for those families in Perth Wellington who are trying to get by on $40,000, $45,000 a year, this bill does absolutely nothing for them. Madam Speaker, I've said when I was first elected to this place that I would try to work collaboratively and cooperatively with all members of this House. But I simply cannot support a measure that is not in the best interests of my constituents. So let's look at my riding of Perth Wellington and the people that have given me the honour of representing them. Under the provisions of this Liberal bill, as many as 84,000 of my constituents will see no benefit from this bill. That's nearly 80% of the residents of my riding will have no tangible benefit from Bill C-2. That's why I'm voting against it, and that's why I think all members of this side of the House will be voting against it, because they understand that we need to make bills and make policy in the best interests of our constituents who sent us here to speak on their behalf.
Great point.
Madam Speaker, my riding is overwhelmingly made up of middle-class Canadians. People like Steve and Betty from Listowel, who have 3 children and are trying to save for their children's education and pay their bills. This bill does nothing for them, but it gives those making $200,000 a significant tax break. This is wrong. What's more is Canadians were told during the election campaign that these measures would be revenue neutral. But now we found out this simply isn't the case. The Parliamentary Budget Officer says that these Liberal measures will actually add $1.7 billion to the structural deficit that Canada's new finance minister is quickly building. So where will this $1.7 billion come from? Will the Liberals cut the first-time homebuyers tax credit? Will they cut the tax credits for families who put their kids in sports and artistic activities? Will they cut funding or cut tax credits for students or apprentices? We simply don't know because they haven't told us. And it's not just income taxes. What's more, Bill C-2 reduces the contribution limit for tax-free savings account for more hardworking Canadian families and seniors. TFSAs have quickly become one of the most effective and popular savings tools. They allow families to save more for a rainy day, whether it's a down payment on a new home or money to make much-needed renovations to their existing home or to plan for their retirement. But don't just take my word on it. There are experts out there in the business community who recognize the value of a higher contribution limit for the TFSA. In fact, one chief actuary from a well-respected HR firm said this: "I think it's really quite a positive move for retirement security in general." Who said that? It was a chief actuary from the Toronto-based HR firm, Morneau Chappelle. You know, I would encourage our finance minister to maybe talk with his former colleagues about the benefits of TFSA and the increase in contribution limits for all families. It's interesting, during this past election, I spoke often about TFSAs, and I often got the most positive response from young people. Those who recognize that this is an effective tool for them to save for their future. But it's ironic that this government, this Liberal government that claims to represent the millennial generation, would rather give millennials a selfie rather than an effective and worthwhile savings tool. In December, I received an email from a constituent, Tyler from Mount Forest, who told me that the reduction in the TFSA limit would personally affect his ability to save for the future. Madam Speaker, this is simply not right. Bill C-2 does nothing to provide meaningful tax relief to the Canadians who actually leave it. It leaves way too many Canadians out in the cold. And that's why, Madam Speaker, I'm proud to be voting against this bill and in favor of my constituents in Perth Wellington who will not be benefiting from it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires? The honourable member from Louis-Hébert.
Yes, thank you, Madam
Merci.
Speaker. My question for the honourable member across the aisle would be, he mentioned income splitting for families as a measure that helped Canadians who need it the most. However, the parliamentary budget officer in March of last year declared that income splitting for families would only benefit to 15% of the Canadians who need it the least. So my question for him, and also he mentioned the TFSA and that he had the millennials tell him how the reduction in contribution would affect them. I don't know many millennials who contribute $10,000 a year in their TFSA. In fact, I don't know any of them. So I was wondering how many of his constituents would have been helped by the income splitting for families when the parliamentary budget officer has stated clearly that it would only benefit the 15% of the richest Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member from Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member opposite for the question. As I said in my speech, my team and I knocked on over 30,000 doors, and actually the income splitting for families was one of the most common issues that was raised at the doorstep and that they saw as supporting their families. They saw it as a worthwhile mechanism to put more money into their pockets, into the pockets of their families. It allows families to make decisions on how best to raise their kids, how best to provide for their families, whether the one parent stays at home, whether it's a father or a mother, or whether one parent goes on a part-time basis. It allows them to decide how they're going to raise their families and gives them the option rather than government telling them the option. And in terms of the TFSA, we need to remember as well that this contribution room does not disappear. And millennials recognize that we're 40 years away from retirement. And that room in the TFSA will never disappear, and it gives the option of us to recontribute years down the road and withdraw and recontribute again. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments, questions et commentaires. We have time for a very brief question because the time is running out on us. So the honourable member from Cowichan, Malahat, Langford, a very brief question for a very brief answer.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I was really glad to hear the member talk about the less advantaged folks in Canadian society who won't be getting anything from this bill. And I'm glad to see he will join me in recognizing that every Liberal MP is basically giving themselves the full maximum tax benefit. One of the duties of the opposition is to also offer proposals. So will he join us in lowering the first income tax bracket from 15% to 14%? Thank you.
A very brief answer, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the honourable member from down the way for his very worthwhile question. I believe, as I'm a conservative, I believe in lowering taxes. So I think it's worthwhile to look at all opportunities to lower taxes for hardworking Canadians and those who actually need it. Lower income Canadians, not the wealthiest, as the Liberals across the way will be doing. Thank you.